Are you okay? What do you want to do now? I'm really sorry. You did the right thing by leaving. Do you want to be doing this? I guess I can apologize. I'm really sorry, Cove. Cove shifted so his back was to you, then he crossed his arms over his chest. Are you mad at me? To your surprise, he actually responded. What? No.
It's okay.
I wish I'd known before, but I guess there's never really a good time to bring up something like that. You're not the one who did anything. His tone was clipped and insulting, though it was now fully clear that none of that negativity was towards you. And we're actually friends, aren't we? Besides, it's not like it worked. We only really became friends way later. It doesn't matter if you took it or not. You nodded your head furiously at that. If there was one thing you didn't want this revelation to do was weaken your relationship. Of course we're friends. Ko seemed to appreciate reassurance. The furrow in his brow eased a little. Yeah, we are. I'm definitely not mad at you. I should thank you for not letting him get to you, and for telling me it happened. My dad never would have. He's always like that. He just does things. He doesn't ask or tell me about it or anything. Ko threw his arms out, his features twisted in frustration. There already was a thing with my mom coming to stay with us for the summer out of nowhere, and that was supposed to be a surprise I'd find out about. Who knows what other things he's done that I've never heard of? Does he know how to think about what someone else might actually want? He paused to take a panting breath, scowling. He continued to listen quietly. Even if it didn't go well, your dad's only trying to make you happy. Yeah, I'd go with that last option. His eyes narrowed. You're right. The worst part is, I know he doesn't do stuff for himself. He does things because he wants to make people happy. Aww. Cove blinked rapidly, and you noticed tears were gathering in his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with emotion. He just makes everything worse. And then he's really sorry, and it's like it's your fault for not being happy that he was at least trying. I can get that. What if all of his plans and always being so pushy did change things? What things? Ko finally met your gaze, his bottom lip trembling. You realized then that he was referring to you and him. What if he did made you stay away from me before we even got to know each other? His voice cracked as he forced himself to speak, through the tears that began to fall in earnest. He did everything he could to say it, but the words were barely a whisper. So you were the best thing about coming here. Ko was honestly terrified over the idea that there was a chance the two of you might not have what you do. He stepped forward and rested your hand on you. You hugged him. You smiled reassuringly. You wiped his tears. Okay, I have to hug him here, right? Ko readily accepted the embrace. He wrapped his arms around you in return. The grip was firm. I'm really glad we got to be friends. Please don't cry. Hey, don't worry about it, alright? You didn't need to say anything. I wouldn't have let anything your dad or anyone else did mess things up. I'm gonna go with, I'm really glad we got to be friends. His features crumpled at your words. You couldn't tell exactly what his expression was, but it seemed to mix between relief and sorrow. He sniffled. Me too. You remained like that for just a little while. Then he scrubbed his eyes with the back of one hand. His gaze turned away from you, growing distant. He's like that with my mom too. The anger he had began to release bubbled back to the surface. Dad wants to make people happy, but he doesn't. The words landed scathingly hard. You were certain it crushed Mr. Holden if he heard them. You'd never known much about his parents' relationship, but you thought you understood it a bit better now. I'm really sorry. You don't actually mean what you're saying. You hate your dad. I'm here for you. How bad? The things were so hard for Ko and his dad. He didn't say anything. Do you hate your dad? Ko just looked at the ground. As the two of you were stifled by the quiet, a thought came to your mind abrupt and sudden. What about your fish? I remember that day when it happened. You ran to the hills behind the house, and Mr. Holden waited for you to come back while my mom checked the park for you. That was when I met you for the first time. After he talked to me about you, Ko lifted his eyes just enough to see you. His head remained low. I remember too. When we first moved to Sunset Bird, I felt lost, like I lost my whole life. Maybe that's why he wanted to help you start life here so much. His eyebrows scrunched up, and he seemed on the verge of tears once more. It was obvious Cove didn't want to think about his dad that way, but it was also hard not to right now. He must be conflicted over where to go from here. Your dad still needs to stop being so forceful, though. You might feel better than you do if you try to make up with your dad. You guys really need to learn how to communicate. I'll be on your side no matter what you do about your dad. I think I'll choose that one. Cove smiled thoughtfully. He didn't say anything, but I had a feeling he appreciated the sport. I'm going back home. His face was set in determination. There was no way you could tell him to do anything else, even if you wanted to, so he only nodded.
I'm sorry.
Thanks, Z. I'm sorry about all this. I kinda want food. But do I go for food? I think I go for the food. Can I come with you? Oh, thank God. Oh, thank God I wasn't awkward. Yeah, why wouldn't you go? He smiled lightly. Just checking. Cove nodded and headed outside. He followed behind him. Once again, the two of you made your way across the street towards the side. Imagine if I said bye there! He didn't pause at the door. He just opened it wide and went in. Cove's parents were sitting at the table, their heads bowed in silence between them. They snapped over at the sound of the door, relieved to see Cove return. Mr. Holden stood up so suddenly his chair squealed across the floor.
Cove?
Kira got out of her chair as well, but less dramatically. How are you feeling, baby? I want to talk to you. His parents looked over him, their features soft. Cove instead snuck a glance at you. You were glad you could be here for him. You suddenly felt like you shouldn't be there. Wait, what kind of glance did he give me? Cove instead snuck a glance. You know what? No hesitation. We went for it. I was thinking about food, but and he said like, why wouldn't you come along? I thought about it for a second because I was thinking about food. You stared back solidly, hoping you could convey your sport with your eyes. Must have worked because Cove stood up a bit straighter. Cove then fully faced his parents. Mr. Holden stepped forward cautiously, his expression twisting in dismay. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have never done something so stupid. It's okay. It really isn't. That was a boneheaded move. If ever there was one, I was bribing an actual child, one I'd never even met before that day. Cove almost cracked a smile, though. He quickly regained his composure. Then it isn't, but I want things to be okay anyway.
I'm sorry.
Kira placed a hand on Mr. Holden's shoulder. Your dad doesn't believe there's something wrong with you or that you can't make your own friends. He can explain. I know why Dad did it. He wanted me to be happy, that's all. He didn't think it'd be like this. It was an accident. Kira sighed heavily. A sad smile appeared on her lips. You're very grown up, Cove. Mr. Holden brought his hands up against his forehead and began to pace around the room. He didn't seem to know what to do with himself. He turned back around to face Cove and Kira. He looked more solemn than you'd ever seen him. I'm not going to do it again. I haven't done it again. Haven't tried to bribe more people or haven't continued to step over a line without registering it? Both. He let out a heavy breath before shrinking down a little. It was impressive because he was pretty tall. This guy's so himbo.
I'm trying.
I don't know, but I don't think so. Cove's throat bobbed as he swallowed thickly. He looked like he was trying to gather all his courage. When he spoke up, his voice was small but firm. You invited Mom here. His dad's eyes widened. Cove was ready to have a talk he had put off before. You didn't ask me if I wanted things to be like this, with both of you together again for just a little while. Mr. Holden's hand slowly returned to his forehead. He was stunned as if someone had just hit him. I did it again, and I didn't even notice. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just do something right? At least Cove seemed relieved that he was able to say what he felt. He knew just how long he'd been holding that in. It was quiet for a long stretch. Mr. Holden had sat down in a chair. His shoulders drooped and his head in his hands. He looked at Cove. He watched his dad and how genuinely he was struggling with what he'd been told. Cove glanced down at the ground and looked back to his dad. I'm not angry anymore. Slowly, Mr. Holden met his son's eyes. I can talk to you about things and what I feel about stuff. I stopped saying that to you since everything happened. I didn't want to talk to you, but you won't have to guess if you know. Mr. Holden broke eye contact with that, shaking his head. My child shouldn't have to take care of me. You should have to make him. They have the same voice now. It's whatever. They're father and son. They have the same voice. Should have to make up for my shortcomings, Cove. I could fix things. I could still change. After having something of an outburst, Mr. Holden turned his face away and spoke more guardedly. Besides, I'm used to that already. Why not get it right? But not a damn thing would happen in what's left of this family if I wasn't making the effort. It's always me. What's one more thing to manage? Dad?
I see.
You're right, Cliff. I know. But I don't think Cove wants to take care of you. He just wants to understand, and he wants his dad to understand too. That's what matters, isn't it? It was still as Mr. Holden digested what Kira said. He stared down at his empty hands held out in front of him. When he looked at Cove again, tiny tears glimmered in the corner of his eyes. He got up and crossed the room to his son. Cove didn't move or looked away as he approached. Mr. Holden set his hands on Cove's shoulders, the touch firm. He furrowed his brows. Bud, you and I are going to talk about every single thought that ever pops into our heads for the rest of our lives. Oh, your life. He shook Cove forward and back a bit. Tears slipped down Cove's cheeks, but he was smiling. No, I don't want that. I was gonna say. Mr. Holden began to smile too. It trembled at the corners, but it was genuine. I'm afraid it's the only way. Kira chuckled even as she blinked away her own tears. Mr. Holden turned toward her. You better not be thinking you can get away from this, Kira. The same is gonna apply to you. You can't! He let go of Cove with one hand while he placed his other arm around Cove's shoulder. Then he faced Kira.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes, I can. He continued to talk as he walked in her direction, bringing Cove along with him. Then, father and son were standing in front of her. Mr. Holden put his other arm around her. Now he had both of them in his arms. Kind of confused about their relationship here. If you think the ideas that I actually go with are bad, you two are going to be amazed by the thoughts I decide against all on our own. Kira jokingly cringed at that concept. Cove smiled tearfully up at his parents. I wonder if, like, her tattoo on her chest, like, above, you know, and his stingray tattoo were gone at the same time, because they look really similar. Thanks, Dad.
I'm so glad.
Thank you, son. But hey, you know what? I'm thinking now. Cove, wiping his face with the back of his hand, shook his head. God, no, you're an incomprehensible maniac. Mr. Holden laughed, not disputing her words. I'm thinking we should eat that dinner I painstakingly made. Salvage boy just gotta heat it up back up. Kira sighed and exaggerated. That we can manage, right, Cove? Yeah. Great, we're making progress already.
Well...
Though, I don't even know how I'm going to start making this up to Z. Carrying that secret for all this time must have been quite the burden to bear. $20 is not nearly enough for all that hullabaloo. I'm not mad about it or anything. It was a hard time for your family. Either way, we will work on it. Okay. Cove ducked his head and spoke towards you. There was a tiny smile on his face. Do you want to stay for dinner still? I'd love to. This is why I came. I don't care about you making up. I just wanted the food. That's what I was invited here for. Mr. Holden finally let go of his family. Kira patted him on the back with a content sigh. You're very good boys. Oh, you're very good boys. I'm so lucky. Cove shyly rubbed his arm, while Mr. Holden nervously rubbed his neck. Neither could make eye contact out of bashfulness. In that moment, they really did seem like father and son. Cove's family was nice, you thought to yourself. You're glad that you got to come over. Wow. Why, when we get to, like, actual teenagerdom or, like, adult, this is gonna be a very sad game, isn't it? I mean, this is just me being 13. What is my hairline? Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Even though you're awake, what did I even just press on? Whatever. Even though you're awake, the sun had barely peeked its head above the horizon, and the sky above was still dark, though lightening by the minute. Usually you wouldn't be up so early, especially during summer vacation, but today was different. Today, instead of the lazy days you were used to, everything around you was a flurry of activity as both your family and Coves prepared for what lay ahead. Because it's the road trip one I remember. Because parked in the street just outside your house was a massive RV camper, so big you couldn't even see Cope's house behind it. His parents had rented the RV for a few days to take him on a short road trip to see the Redwood National Park. He glanced at Cope, who was standing nearby, taking the scene in front of him. The prospect of the trip had to be a mixed bag for him, but it was only 3 days, so it seemed he was dealing with it as best he could, especially now that you and your family were joining them. You weren't sure how exactly it had happened. You know your parents and Cope spoke to each other often, and somewhere along the way, plans were made after Cliff offered to share the space. I feel like our parents just ship each other, and you know what? I'm cool with it. Other situations, I'd be like, no. The parents all thought it was a fantastic idea. You had already gotten a good look inside while helping to load everything in, and you had to admit that while it was a really big car, fitting that many people inside was going to be snug.
Let's go.
Move it or lose it, kiddo. Mom bustled past with a cooler in one hand and a large bottle of water under the other. She was upbeat for this early in the morning. In every relationship, there's always a night owl and someone who's an early bird. I guess, no, it's not that. It's someone who can wake up early or someone who can't. Ma, however, seems to be on the other side of the wavelength. She followed behind her wife, dragging her feet on every step. I'm going to need a whole jug of coffee, but once we had hit the road.